Hello, my name is Gerald Prater, and today I'll be discussing the variance in political ambition levels between men and women. When discussing this topic, it is important to note the historical context, and that is that females have transitioned from, or the portrayal of females has transitioned from a more traditional role as a primary caregiver, nurturer, and supporter to more of an independent woman who is able to succeed in the workforce, an area that was generally dominated by males. Now that they've successfully integrated into the workforce, the question is, are they able to succeed at the highest levels of executive office? And the answer is yes. But in the United States, unfortunately, we haven't had a female president up to this point. So, what is the reason behind that? When you look at the gender distribution across the United States in the population, you see that over 52% of the population is female. But when you look over in Congress, you only see a 16.8% female representation. So, why are females being underrepresented in Congress? So, the question is, okay, are there just less qualified female candidates, or what? But the real question to answer is, why do women have less of a political ambition to pursue those offices? The answer to that is that this variance is attributable to societal discrimination, a lack of a precedent of a female president, and just in general senior executive positions, in addition to the gender gap in self-perceived qualifications that females place on themselves. Looking at the societal discrimination, you have to begin with the media and the media's role in portraying the female in a certain way. While many feminist movements and the push for equality have brought to light the change in the role of women in modern day society, the media fails at times to recognize these changes, and at times is responsible for holding women back. One example that can be utilized is that you look at the media coverage of female presidential candidates, and oftentimes they focus too much on physical appearance and things that are less relevant, while men would receive issue-based coverage. The lack of a precedent is self-explanatory, where you see internationally other countries have adopted, have taken more female positions in those senior executive positions. The United States, you have not seen a female president, and the lack of that precedent just by itself can create a challenge for females. And then the gender gaps in self-perception. When you have a man and a woman who are equally qualified, for some reason the man is more likely to serve in a certain capacity, in the political capacity, than the female is, because the media's portrayal of the female is that even if they're equal, the female will naturally be less competent just by virtue of being a female. That's exactly how we've portrayed as a society in the media, how we've portrayed our women. So what are the short-term public policy impacts that this has on our society? First, in 1991, we saw Argentina adopt a gender quota system that mandated a 30% female representation in their congressional seats, which was widely effective and then adopted internationally with several countries. The United States would certainly have to consider utilizing a system similar to this in the event that we cannot address the gender disparity. Second, we see the gender gap transcending beyond the political realm into the civilian sector, evident by Defense Secretary Ash Carter's decision to remove the ban of women serving in combat roles. That decision alone is showing the increased pressure that Congress is facing to address some of these gender issues. Lastly, Congress will also face pressure to address some of the resources that women have available, especially those women who also are balancing that between motherhood and the professional setting. Because a lot of times, women are forced, either by virtue of the societal barriers that are in place to choose between motherhood and a professional career. So whether it be the revision of childcare or any external resources, Congress will certainly have to revisit that. So how do we mitigate this? How do we close or at least shorten that gender gap between men and women in the political ambition levels? First, we could, as as the government, consider implementing a gender quota, because experience, above all, is one of the most important things when considering presidential candidates. And if 30% of our congressional seats are filled by women, that almost doubles our size and increases the pool of candidates that are able to potentially serve in the future. And then lastly, the revision of the education system. So a lot of sociological experiments indicate that the issue of this gender disparity is deeply embedded in our norms and what our beliefs are as a society. And if we're able to address that by virtue of a more gender neutral approach to education, that could go a long way in combating some of the disparity that we've seen. So in conclusion, there are still significant things that we need to do in order to combat the gender gap, but there are some things in place that Congress have seen, and progress has been made by those feminist movements and the push for equality that lead to believe that we're approaching closer to a time where we may see a female president one day.